Hello, everybody. My name's Steve Philp, and I'm the Partnership Director here at Portugal Pathways and your host for today's webinar, which is all about securing EU residency through Portugal's Golden Visa. Today's event will hopefully give you some more clarity and understanding of how the Portuguese Golden Visa Residency by Investment Programme provides one of the most attractive paths to dual citizenship and potential EU passports. Today, we'll explore the options available to international families outside of the EU that want a 5-year golden visa in Portugal, and we'll discuss the timelines, fees involved, documentations, and how your family can benefit. Before we get going, just a few notes. The webinar is being recorded, so if you do have to sort of jump off before the end, a recording of today's webinar will be sent out to you within the next sort of 24 hours. And there will be a Q&A session at the end. So we encourage you to leave your questions and your comments. And we'll obviously try to cover as many of them as we can at the Q&A at the end. If we don't, the team at Portugal Pathways will get back to you individually to answer questions, to arrange meetings, or to deal with any queries that you have. So, let's get going. So I'd like to introduce you to your panelists today. Firstly, we have Paul Stannard. Paul is the chairman and the founder at Portugal Pathways and the Portugal Owners Investment Club. Joining Paul, we have Henrique Nunes. Henrique is the immigration attorney at CMS Lisbon, a leading international law firm that supports families investing or coming to Portugal. Henrique heads up the immigration team of lawyers and has a deep expertise in navigating and obtaining Portugal's golden visa residency by investment, along with all the other D visas that require a much longer consistent period of stay in Portugal. That's compared with the 7 days a year that you need for the golden visa. And lastly, we have Thomas Kohler. Thomas is a private equity analyst at Quadrantis Capital, a leading Portuguese VC and PE asset manager with significant experience in the golden visa market. Quadrantis Capital has been operating for over 10 years, offering a wide range of investment fund solutions to its clients, including multi-asset and specialized funds, and consistently delivering high value and upside to its investors. Through a Portugal Future Fund, which is a golden visa eligibility investment vehicle, Quadrantis also presents an opportunity to obtain Portuguese residency. So thank you, Thomas, Henrique, and Paul for joining us today. So let's sort of jump straight into it. The first sort of thing I want to sort of ask, and this is a question to you, Paul. You've worked closely with international wealth for decades now, and more recently, those considering Portugal's golden visa residency by investment. Can you talk us through what the main motivating factors behind this is and why the golden visa is so appealing?
Well, I think it's first worth starting. There's, lots of people around the world are looking at a worldview and wanting to, might be a global citizen or have a dual passport. But Portugal's golden visa residency by investment program is possibly the most successful and actually the one most in demand in the world right now. What we've seen is, 2 or 3 different types of people that are coming through. You have people that basically want a plan B or a plan C, because we live in a more uncertain world, and having that flexibility of being able to have access to Europe through Portugal, through the Golden Visa program, and the flexibility that brings in terms of being able to explore 29 of those Schengen region countries. But also a number of people also that are already in Portugal that worry about counting days for the 90 days out of 183 that you have to be with temporary residency, and want that flexibility to be able to come and go, or actually decide where they have tax status, which they can do with the golden visa. They can choose where. And then during that 5 years, they can look at their their own estate and their investments, and maybe transition their investments to create a more broad portfolio that's not, caught up in one jurisdiction or one sector. So it gives people that opportunity to diversify investments into a market that is, really growing and punching above its weight right now.
Thank you. Henrique, obviously you've worked in this sector, obviously since sort of day one, really. What are your thoughts with regards to sort of motivating factors, and maybe why it's so popular at the moment? You're on mute, Henrique, just so you know.
That me and technology is always this amazing relationship. I think that Paul already mentioned everything, but basically the advantage of having a second residence in Portugal by staying only 7 days per year in Portugal with an access to an European passport after 5 years, it's a really appealing alternative, a really appealing solution for all of those that feel that by any reason their countries are in this dangerous transition stage. Americans, British, after the Brexit transition period and all the tax and inheritance amendments that they add to the law, basically having a place where they can feel well, where they can accumulate the necessary time for an European passport only by attending 7 days per year in Portugal. I think that this is basically the most appealing feature of the Golden Visa program, the fact that they look at this as a pathway to an European passport, which is really, really, really appealing to many for this. I think that this is the main reason.
Thank you. Thomas, obviously, again, from your perspective, you deal with many investors who are coming down this pathway. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you. And I agree with what Paul and Enrique have said so far regarding the motivations that investors have when it comes to investing through the Portuguese Golden Visa program. Very often people are looking for a secondary residence or a secondary home, but also an alternative citizenship and passport. And as Enrique mentioned, the Portuguese Golden Visa program is not very strict when it comes to minimum residency requirements at only 7 days per year. So it's quite accessible, even for people who are not looking to relocate or move permanently to Portugal, but just to have that second option and potentially that second passport. We found from our experience that another motivating factor related to the Portuguese Golden Visa program, but also more broadly when it comes to investments in Portugal, is that this is an economy that offers a lot of diversification opportunities and has a lot of sectors that are emerging in the Portuguese economy that have had very solid performance and very solid returns in the last few years. And we have a number of different fund solutions that target these specific sectors. Some of these funds being eligible for the Golden Visa program, such as the Portugal Future Fund. And it's a fund that's gathered a lot of interest since we launched the fund a few months ago for many reasons, the Golden Visa program obviously being one of them. But I think the fact that Portugal in itself as a country and as an economy has a lot to offer. It has a lot of very strong sectors, including hospitality, including the hotel, the tourism industry, which has been strong for a number of years. But in general, I think the Portuguese economy is also becoming more sophisticated. It is growing alongside the foreign investments that we've seen in Portugal in the last few years. The Portuguese capital markets are also benefiting quite significantly from these kinds of incentive schemes like the Portuguese Golden Visa. And all of these different characteristics, I think, are contributing to the national economic growth of Portugal, but also delivering good returns, solid financial performances, upside potential for our investors. And at the end of the day, I think this is a win-win situation where Portugal can benefit from the influx of foreign high net worth individuals, from foreign investments, but also investors around the globe can diversify their investments, put money in euro-based funds that are investing in hospitality and other high potential sectors, and get the added benefit of residency in Portugal and a clear pathway to European citizenship.
Let me just add something, Steve, because I think it's important for all of those who are comparing the different Golden Visa programs. Why the Portuguese Golden Visa program and not the Spanish one or the Greek one? Okay, because many times you end up having the investors comparing the different regimes, because as we were saying, the ultimate goal is always getting the European passport. And in Spain, instead of 5 years of legal residence that you need to accumulate for the passport, you need 10 years. And the Spanish regime demands that they actually live there before the citizenship is granted. And in Greece, many Americans were going to Greece because of the Greek islands, and because they ended up getting to the conclusion that unfortunately the Greek government is not giving citizenship. So even when comparing the Portuguese Golden Visa with the other main Golden Visa programs, the Portuguese Golden Visa is clearly the best one to achieve the ultimate goal, which is having access to European passports. Okay, I just wanted to add this.
Good, thank you. And we haven't even mentioned sunshine, heritage and culture, food, and of course the Portuguese people. So I mean, all of those and more.
I think that with that, what happens is that they end up being here more than the 7 days per year.
Exactly.
That's what
That's
happens.
our experience, isn't it?
Exactly, according to our recent experience.
So thank you, everybody. So obviously, since you mentioned it, but since the Portuguese Golden Visa program is no longer available via direct or indirect real estate purchases, could you guys sort of go into what is the more popular route now? And Henrik, I'm going to sort of start with you and then go to Thomas and Paul.
Of course. So exactly as you were saying, the real estate is no longer the investment in real estate is no longer eligible for Golden Visa purposes. You have a few modalities nowadays. You have the investment of 500,000 in an existing company, or the reinforcement of a share capital the setup of a new company, or the reinforcement of the share capital of an existing company with 500,000. The only thing is that you need to have in this modality of investment a concern on the number of permanent job positions that you have. If you're setting up a new company, you need to create 5 new permanent job positions. If you're reinforcing the share capital of existing company, you need to maintain at least 10 job positions with a minimum of 5 permanent. So it's a little bit more confusing. Then you have just for informative purposes, you have the investment in cultural projects, which is basically not an investment but a donation. It will be 250,000, but with no return whatsoever. So most of the times I don't even advise that to my clients. And then you have the creation of 10 job positions, not related with an investment directly with an investment. And then the most famous one, and the one that 99% of our clients and of all the other firms are following through right now, which is investment in private equity funds. So literally 99% of the clients that we have nowadays are investing the 500,000 in one or more funds. As long as they comply with the threshold of each one of the funds, they can invest, they can diversify the investment and invest in funds. And this is clearly the modality of Golden Visa that is being chosen by the vast majority of the investors choosing the Portuguese Golden Visa program.
Thank you, Henrik. Thomas, I mean, I'm sure that'll be your experience as well, but again, you can probably delve a little bit deeper into that particular pathway.
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you, Enrique. Agree with all the points there when it comes to the different options for the Golden Visa, and the fact that the fund solution is at the moment the most popular route when it comes to investors looking for the Golden Visa option. It is the one that allows you to diversify to the greatest extent your investment. You're not putting money in just one specific company. You're investing in a fund that has diversified broad investments. Some funds are sector specific, so they might be looking specifically at hospitality, or they might be looking specifically at technology or startups or renewable energy or whatever the case may be. Or they can also be diversified funds that are looking into broad investments across different sectors of the Portuguese economy. What we see with funds, in order to be Golden Visa eligible, is that they have to meet a few extra requirements, namely that they cannot make any direct or indirect real estate investments, and that they have to invest at least 60% of their assets in Portugal. So the incentive here is not only to invest in a Portuguese fund, but also that these Portuguese funds must be substantially investing their assets in the Portuguese economy for the capitalization and growth of Portuguese companies. I think it's the most straightforward solution at the moment. For some reasons that Enrique has already mentioned. Diversification is obviously a great advantage. I think another advantage is that you're investing in a fund that is managed by a professional and duly authorized fund manager, and you yourself as an investor don't have to be worried in terms of actively managing this asset or actively managing the company you're investing in. In a sense, you're outsourcing the financial and asset management to a professional company that takes care of all of that for you. So it's a passive investment. It also generates for you a passive income source. Typically, funds have returns on investment that are foreseen in the fund's management regulations. Obviously, this depends on market performance, and these kinds of funds cannot guarantee specific profitability or specific returns, but these are funds that sometimes have dividend payments, sometimes they have lump sum payments towards the maturity of the fund, but typically across the different golden visa eligible funds on the market, you also get a significant return on your investment. It's a passive return, and for these reasons, we find that the fund solution is the most popular option when it comes to golden visa clients.
Thank you, Thomas. And Paul, from a Portugal Pathways perspective, what have you seen in terms of the recent sort of surge with regards to golden visas?
Yeah, I mean, we get inquiries in, as you would know, Steve, for all of the different options, investing in a startup that create jobs, the donation route. But, they have a lot of different challenges in terms of finding the right things to donate, and then obviously no return. You then have the issue of them maintaining the jobs. So I would totally agree with the panel that, 99% of people are going the alternate investment fund route. And as Thomas rightly said, the diversification and how that has evolved. We at Portugal Pathways produce a golden visa index of over 30 of the top funds that are approved for this purpose, so that people can look with their advisors at the different options while they're working with the immigration firms like CMS on the application side, so that they can marry up in the middle ahead of making their application and investment.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thomas, I mean, you mentioned a few times that obviously a Quadrantis, but you're representing sort of Portugal Future Fund today. Could you tell the audience a little bit more about the Portugal Future Fund? I mean, and obviously the track record of Quadrantis. And again, I think we've got some slides to pull up as well, which sort of really just sort of reiterate some of the points I know that you're keen to make.
Yes, sure. I think, do you have the slide deck there?
Yeah, I'm just going to get that slides. Bear with me 2 seconds
thanks.
as I load them up for you. Here we go.
Okay, perfect. Yes, as you were mentioning, I'm representing Portugal Future Fund today, which is one of the funds we have in the Quadrantis portfolio. It's a fund that is marketed primarily towards golden visa investors and international investors who are looking for an opportunity to access the golden visa program through this investment. A little bit of a background on Quadrantis Capital as the fund manager. So we're a venture capital and private equity asset manager in Portugal. We've been working for many years across a very wide range of sectors. So we have investments in real estate, hospitality, but also in renewable energy, technology, private credit deals, and multi-asset funds. So we have quite diversified investments across a wide range of sectors. Our team brings over 30 years of management expertise in leading institutions such as JP Morgan and the World Bank. We've averaged returns of around 15% across our previous funds. So as a pooled return from several different funds we have, including tech VC funds and private equity-centric hospitality funds. At the moment, we have over 350 million euros in assets under management. And this track record and this experience with financial management and asset management has also led us to launch new funds that are targeting international investors and that are targeting golden visa eligible investments. So that's where the Portugal Future Fund comes in. If you don't mind just skipping over to the next slide. Yeah, this is where the Portugal Future Fund comes in. So this is a fund that we've recently launched based on the track record of our team, based on our experience in managing different types of investment funds in the last few years, this fund has been designed in order to be fully compliant with Portuguese golden visa regulations and to offer you an investment vehicle that is a pathway to the golden visa and further down the line, Portuguese citizenship. It's a multi-asset fund that's investing mainly in sectors of the Portuguese economy that have high potential and have demonstrated in the last few years very solid performance. We include here some hospitality investments, and for this fund, I think another important characteristic, and this is something that I know is important for Paul as well, is the community. It's the investor community. It's the connections that we are building between investors, between the management company, between the investors, between the promoters of the fund. Because at the end of the day, we find that investing in a Quadrantes fund is not just about financial performance. It's also about creating these links and creating these ties between like-minded people who are looking for similar objectives and have similar goals when it comes to their investment. We have a bit of a technical sheet here when it comes to the fund's overall structure. So this is a fund with a maturity of 7 years, which is aligned with a 5-year minimum requirement for the golden visa. It has a hard cap of 100 million euros, so that will be the total amount that is being fundraised for this fund, with a minimum investment amount of 100,000 euros. So this can build towards your 500,000 for the golden visa. You can, of course, invest 500,000 euros in this fund. But as I think Paul mentioned earlier, you also do have the option to diversify and potentially split across different funds if you don't want to put all the money in just one fund. There's a management fee of 2%, with a hurdle rate of 4% and a 65-35 split above this annual hurdle. I think you can skip over to the next slide. As I was mentioning before, this is a multi-asset fund where one of the important characteristics is sector diversification, but also targeting sectors in the Portuguese economy and projects in the Portuguese economy that have demonstrated over the last few years to be viable, to deliver long-term value to investors, and both individual investors and institutional investors, as is the case of our fund. And our objective is to capitalize on the growing sectors of the Portuguese economy to deliver long-term value to our clients alongside the benefits of residency and potentially citizenship in Portugal and the European Union.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah.
When you look at your management team and its background, it's obviously very impressive. The investment advisory team have significant experience with startups and major companies such as JP Morgan, DMGT, and Rolls-Royce, as well as obviously the World Bank. Could you give us a little bit more context? And again, I think we have a sort of a slide really just to sort of put this point over. So I'll just get that slide up for you. There we go.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Yes, as you were mentioning, we have a team of 4 partners who oversee the investments of Quadrantes Capital as a fund manager. They are responsible for the let's say high-level decisions when it comes to our funds. Each member of the team has specialization or expertise in one specific sector. So, for example, João Rafael has been working for many years in mergers and acquisitions, especially in the technology and industry sectors, and he brings a lot of insights when it comes to our investments in industry and technology. We have a number of investments, for example, in startups, in some of our more tech-centric funds. So we have 2 funds, Quadrantes Innovation 1 and Quadrantes Innovation 2, that have been targeting mainly Portuguese startups and Portuguese technological companies in the last 5 or 6 years. But we also have other members of our team who have more diversified experience in other sectors. So Pedro Rosas, who is a well-known Portuguese businessman, has been working in the hospitality and real estate sectors for many, many years. Currently, he is the CEO of David Rosas, one of the biggest jewelry company groups in Portugal. Similarly, Paulo has been working in VC and private equity for over 30 years now. He's worked in infrastructure funds, both public and private, and has a lot of experience in mergers and acquisitions, startups, and in project oversight when it comes to infrastructure funds and also renewable energy funds. Finally, our partner José Fernando Figueiredo has more of a formal banking and finance experience. So he's worked for many, many years in the World Bank as a senior consultant. Previously, he was also president of the Portuguese Banco Fomento, which is a public Portuguese bank focused on investing in various Portuguese companies. At the moment, he's also a member of the European Innovation Council, so he advises us on several different investments in a wide range of sectors, focusing specifically on credits, bonds, and other types of financial assets.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for that. Paul, obviously you have a lot of knowledge when it comes to the economic stats and key growth sectors in Portugal, as mentioned by Thomas just now. Could you talk us through some of them and the different types of funds that are available to investors looking at Golden Visa residency by investment?
Yeah, Steve, I think I've got a slide that sort of links to some of the economic stats, and then I can just touch on that for a second, because Portugal is in a very special place in its history. Investor confidence is at an all-time high, with people like Ernst & Young reporting that investor confidence in Portugal is at 84%. And you've got things like investment attractiveness at 77%, with the rest of Europe now in its 66%, which says a lot for a country of Portugal's size. Economic growth from the European Union, Eurozone, from the European Union itself is saying that Portugal is going to outperform Germany, France, and larger developed nations like the UK, Canada, and with what's going on in America, who knows what's coming next. But and also it's seen inflation. Well, it's been creeping up in other areas. Portugal, since the beginning of this year, inflation has been going down. So it's in a good trajectory. And what's driving that is some of what was discussed earlier is these sectors that are punching above their weight. So media and international events, tech, renewables, luxury, tourism and hospitality, where the demands and standards are being driven up. We then also got healthcare. Portugal has the third best healthcare infrastructure in the world, with a combination of public and private healthcare. So when we talk about diversification, obviously, if you go in funds that have a blended approach where they invest in 4 or 5 of these sectors, you are getting that diversification. Now, you can spread that diversification further by investing in a single sector fund that might be invested in biotech, for instance, and then mix that with something like the Portugal Future Fund. So these are some of the options. And then thirdly, you have what are called open funds that tend to invest in public stocks in Portugal, and bonds, where they're offering the option of some form of liquidity, where you can cash out because they're public stocks. But you have to remember, when you're going for a golden visa, if you take your money out before you've got the European passport and applied for permanent citizenship, because of the rules that the Portuguese government about keeping the money invested, you can have the returns, but if you take the capital out before that, you invalidate your opportunity to get a European passport. And as with any funds internationally, it's usually 3 or 4 years of investing, 3 or 4 years of harvesting, and then 3 or 4 years of exiting. Well, a lot of the timelines for the funds in Portugal for Gold Visa are 7 to 10 years. But in reality, because currently it takes about 18 months after the 5 years to get the European passport for your family and that have qualified. You have to bear all of that in mind.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for that insight. So one thing I just want to touch on is the fact that obviously, if you've got any the audience, if you've got any specific questions, or you need any support that relates to your specific circumstances, our team will have a link in the chat and on the screen to maybe schedule an initial sort of no obligation discovery call with one of Portugal Pathways Golden Visa experts. So if you want to find out how obviously the Golden Visa residency by investment pathway might suit your needs, please obviously click on that link and obviously book that sort of no obligation initial discovery call with someone from our team. Henrique, as head of the specialist team of immigration lawyers at CMS, just give me some idea of what some of the backgrounds of people that you and the team are seeing utilize the golden visa residency by investment pathway.
Of course. Let me just to clarify something that Paul just said. It was just for people to understand. Usually you have around 7 to 8 years or 10 years. Just for people to understand, in order to accumulate the 5 years that everyone needs to accumulate of legal residence in order to be able to be eligible, and then the 2 years that it's taking more or less of citizenship requests. So it usually takes 5 to 7 years, 5 to 8 years, let's say, everything together from the moment the applicant makes investment until the moment the citizenship request is approved and the applicant has access to a passport. Okay, this is why the lifetime. This is the reason of the lifetime of the investment. Regarding the background of the investors, well, I must tell you that. After COVID, we started having many Americans, but after the end of last year, we had what we like calling the Trump effect. Okay, so we have a tremendous number of American investors and American families in search of this pathway to an European passport, okay, because it's really efficient and interesting for them staying in Portugal only 7 days per year and have access to a Portuguese passport. After I think we lost Paul in the meantime.
Yeah, I think he'll jump back, Henrique, I'm sure.
Okay, no problem. So we have mainly Americans nowadays, lots of Americans. Then we also have British, okay, many British investors. So I would say that 60% of if we need to risk a percentage, it's always good to risk percentages. 60% Americans, then around 30% British, and the remaining 30% Canadians, Australians. Why this? First of all, to have access to European passport. In the case of the investors coming from United Kingdom, because of all the amendments they had to the tax law, to their inheritance law, and all of that. And I think that regarding the background is basically this. What is interesting about the Portuguese regime is that we don't have inheritance or gift tax in Portugal, and the investment in the funds is quite efficient in the sense that there is no tax on any upside from the investment in one or more of the funds for golden visa purposes. Okay, and Portuguese investors, which does not matter here, but just for purposes of information. Will pay 10% tax only on the upside coming from the funds. I would also add that for U.S. families, for U.S. investors, of course, there are tax considerations that we need to be careful. We need to carefully analyze because, as all the Americans know, they know that the shopper will come to rescue no matter where they are, but this shopper has a price. So they will always pay taxes just because they have an American passport. So in the case of the Americans, it's important to be careful and to see what is the result of the analysis of the comparison analysis of double tax treaties, of the situation in the US towards the situation in Portugal. So it's important to analyze this. And basically, it's this on the background of our investors. It's this mainly Americans, many British, and then a percentage of investors from the Middle East, from Canada, from South Africa. What I can say for people to understand the traction that we are having right now is that in these first 5 months of this year, we had slightly more a number of investors, a bigger number of investors than in the last 2 years of Golden Visa. Okay, this is important just for people to understand how this changed, and I'm not exaggerating. It's literally we already have this year 10 more golden visas that we had last year. So we have this year around 40 to 50 golden visas, which is a lot considering that in the last 2 years, there was a slight decrease for many reasons and for many. So right now the traction is amazing, really, and it's growing each month it passes. Okay, so it's just for people to understand. Regarding the, I would just say that for everyone that is listening to us, that all this tax analysis, even from an international perspective, all this advice regarding the funds in which to invest, it would be good for all the investors to search some. Of course, we are also here for any clarification, but it would be good for investors to look for Portugal pathways and try to find the best way, and not only the best investment, but the best way to complete their investment from a tax perspective and from a financial perspective. So it would be good for them to consult you guys together with your partners to see what would be the best way of completing the investment, because of all these reasons that I was mentioning.
Brilliant. Thank you, Henrik. I think the audience would have found all that very helpful. I'm going to stick with you, Henrik and Thomas. I just wonder if you could sort of both walk us through the application and obviously the investment process, you know, as well as looking at maybe the typical onboarding process and what an investor might have to go through if they do decide to sort of go down the golden visa route. And Henrik, I'm obviously going to start with you because you know you're towards the start.
Now, of course.
Thomas.
So let me tell you, and yes, so this is something that now I work with Golden Visa since 2012. So you can imagine that I have some experience on it. This didn't change. So the investment always starts by, the process always starts by asking for a Portuguese tax ID in order to be able to open a Portuguese bank account. The investment needs to be done through a Portuguese bank account. Then the idea would be to start choosing the funds and collecting all the documents that need to be collected for the family reunification requests. Let me just add, because this is an important part, because this is also an advantage of the Golden Visa program. Within the same investment, we can add to the file not only the main applicant but also his families. Okay, so the spouse, any children with less than 18 years old or more than 18 years old, if they are considered dependent. How are they considered dependent? If they are single, so they are not married, we can prove that they are not married, and they are enrolled as full-time students somewhere, okay? Even if they are 30 years old, if they comply with these two requirements, we can demonstrate to authorities that they are dependents for Golden Visa purposes and include them in the family reunification request. So, getting back to sorry for this between parentheses, but I think it's really useful. So we start by the tax ID and Portuguese bank account. We start collecting all the documents, not only for the main applicant, but also for the family, birth certificates, marriage certificates, criminal records for all in the family with more than 16 years old. Bear in mind that these documents, just for if we speak in the future, I will send all this in written with all these notes, but just for sake of this conversation, all these documents need to be certificated and apostilled, okay? Which means basically getting a stamp in the place, in the country where they're issued, saying this is an official document in the country where it was issued. After this, the investment in the fund should be completed. We will have a statements issued by the management entity of the fund and the bank. We will file it online together with all the documents that we collected for the main applicant and for the family. We file it online, okay? And from this moment onward, and this is really important, from the moment we file it online, it starts ticking for the 5 years of the citizenship. Okay, this is a really game changer that came from the last legal amendment to the Golden Visa regime. Contrary to what used to happen before, the 5 years would start ticking from the moment the first card is issued. Now, the 5 years start ticking from the moment we file the Golden Visa online, which means that it doesn't matter how long you will wait for the Golden Visa cards. Your ultimate goal of getting the passport starts being achieved from the moment we file everything online, okay? After this, we will get a pre-approval and you will be called for biometrics. This is the first time that actually everyone in the family will need to come to Portugal physically, okay? We'll need to come to Portugal, period. Physically, it's funny. So they will basically need to come to Portugal to collect the biometrics for the cards, picture, signature, and fingerprints. And all the family needs to come for this specific purpose. After this, the card is issued, and you need to start complying with the golden visa requirements, which are keeping the investment for until you have the citizenship, and demonstrating that you are coming to Portugal with all the family, because these requirements apply to all the family, 7 days per year, 14 days at the end of each 2 years. So the investor basically can decide if they come 7 days in the first year, 7 days in the second year, 14 days in the second year. So it's up to the investor. And basically the process in broad terms, it's this. When you get to the 5th year of citizenship, the investor will need to demonstrate, the investor and the family will need to demonstrate that they speak a basic level of Portuguese, which will basically be an A2 level certificate. Nowadays, it's possible to have access to this certificate without doing the exam, which is an advantage that my clients are actually loving. So there are companies in the market, you can also speak with Portugal Pathways about it, who basically give you access to the certificate only by attending online classes, which is a solution that is really interesting for many of our clients, as I was saying. And I think it's this, Steve. Do you want me to develop anything else in broad terms? This is the...
I think that's a very comprehensive sort of overview of the process. And Thomas, obviously, what sort of point do the fund managers come into the whole process and with the investor, and what additional documentations would you need to onboard? Excuse me. I swallowed a fly.
Water.
Yeah,
Are you okay?
I know obviously that KYC and AML checks are standard for any kind of investment internationally by the banks, fund managers, and immigration laws. But if you could just give us an overview on what you guys do and how you sort of work hand in glove, not only with Portugal Pathways, but with obviously a lawyer like CMS.
Of course. So first of all, when it comes to investing in a qualitative fund, the procedure is very similar to any other type of investment you might want to make with a financial institution, whether it's opening a bank account, whether it's opening an investment account, whether it's investing in any type of fund from a European Union country or from the UK or the United States. The standards are pretty much quite similar. We have a standard KYC or know your client procedure where we're required to have the investor's identification documents, so passport, citizenship card, if applicable, international tax ID number, proof of address, all of these basic requirements when it comes to identifying our customers. And secondly, we also require documentation to identify the source of funds for investors in, let's say, the amount that they want to invest. So this is just to comply with existing anti-money laundering and prevention of terrorist financing measures, which are common practice, whether it's in Portugal or in other countries in the European Union. So it's pretty much up to typical international standards when it comes to KYC and AML procedures. A lot of the documents that we request, or pretty much all of the documents that we request, will also be requested by your bank when you're opening a bank account in Portugal. And of course, your lawyers at CMS will be able to assist you with this process. And much of the documentation that the banks will need, we will need as well. So in a sense, you will be killing two birds with one stone with a lot of the documents that you send. But at the end of the day, we don't require any additional documents beyond what is, let's say, legally required and imposed in terms of international standards for KYC and AML procedures.
Lovely. Thank you, John.
Let me just add, Steve, really quickly. Let me just add that, of course, that the idea of CMS is to support the client since moment zero, asking the Portuguese tax ID and opening the bank account, until the moment you have the cards, which the cards are issued, which means that we will also assist, of course, we work closely with Quadrantes and with Tomas and with this team in order to assist the client and each step. Of course, there are things in the KYC that will need to be done by the client, but everything that we can be done in order to assure that the client has a swift process until the investment is completed, it will be done by us. Okay, we will assist along the way.
Lovely. Thank you for clarifying. Paul, where do you see the demand for Portugal's Golden Visa going in the next sort of 1 to 2 years? And are we likely to see any amendments or changes to Portugal's Golden Visa? You're on mute, Paul.
Apologies.
You're on mute again. You double tap.
I pressed the button too quickly, obviously. I do apologise. Yeah, so it's a question that's been asked quite a lot in recent months because we had elections in Portugal, and that created some doubts that maybe some changes may happen. But even yesterday, the government has come out and reiterated that they are committed to the Golden Visa Residency by Investment program, and if anything, they will start adding to it, not taking away from it. So it is the perfect time to make the most of this Golden Visa program.
Lovely, thank you. My next question, and again, I'm going to sort of stick with you, Paul, on this one, is about the Portugal Golden Visa Investment Fund Index that Portugal Pathways have put together, and that they update obviously throughout the year, and includes, as we said before, over sort of 30 of the alternative investment funds that are registered with the Portugal regulators, the CMVM. Paul, can you give us sort of some idea of what that is and what it's all about?
Yeah, sorry, Steve. Could you just? It went silent for 10 seconds.
Okay.
There, so.
Yeah. This was really just to sort of give the audience an understanding of the investment fund index that Portugal Pathways has put together, and just obviously what that is and why it's of use and to our clients. Yeah,
because there are over 60 funds that we know about in Portugal, but they're not all golden. They're not all applicable to golden visas. Some might be property, which don't count. Also, certain citizens. So the US have to be careful for based on their tax situation. That they don't fall foul of US Treasury situations where they invest in a non-QEF compliant fund for reporting on their annual returns through the fund. They need to make sure that they're picking the right funds that are applicable to them. So we decided, because it was so disparate, to put together an index of over 30 of the top funds that approved this process, that work for US connected citizens, so they can see from that list what's relevant and see all the different parameters, from their fees to their track record to their to the thesis and background, and what the portfolio may be around. So if you take someone like Crondantis, they have had over a dozen funds, and all have come out in a positive outcome, and since 2022 I've seen 100 million under management, now 350 million. Now, none of these things are a guarantee of future performance, and that has to be borne in mind, but the index is there for anyone to use, and then when they bring their wealth managers or their other advisors to the conversations, they can see a snapshot and comparisons on any shortlist that they want to put together.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Just before we get on to the Q&A, I can see lots of questions in the chat. And again, just want to reiterate to the audience, if we don't get around to answering all of those questions, then our team will obviously pick those up individually with you and respond. A couple more questions, really. Obviously, we've spoken a lot about diversification and mitigating risk when investing in funds for approved, obviously, for Golden Visa. Can you sort of, each of you maybe talk about, about spreading the risk and why maybe it's so popular and the advantages of it? Thomas?
Yes, sure. I agree. I think this is a tendency we've seen in the last few months, where investors are increasingly looking not just to invest in one fund, but to potentially invest in 2 funds or 3 funds, so that they don't have all their eggs in one basket, so to speak. I do think that a diversification strategy does not necessarily require investing in several different funds. There are lots of funds on the market that are already quite diversified and that already have investments across several different sectors. And sometimes there is no advantage in investing in a different fund from a sector diversification point of view. I think there is also such a thing as over diversification and investing in too many funds, to the extent that you kind of lose track of what you're doing, or you're going for less reputable funds so that you can have as many as possible. I think as a general rule, if you're an investor who likes a more specialized fund, it's good to have some of your money in a specialized fund and then some of your money in a multi-asset or diversified fund. So you can do 250-250. Some arrangement like that, I think from a diversification point of view, makes sense. I don't think it makes sense to invest 50,000 euros in 10 different funds, because not only will you lose track of what you're doing, you'll also inevitably end up picking some funds which might be less reputable or be managed by less reputable asset managers. And this might ultimately be detrimental to your investment objectives. So while I do think that diversifying across funds and to some extent across management companies does make sense for some investors, depending on your preferences and depending on your personal situation, diversification is certainly possible within just one fund, especially if you're looking at funds that are targeting high growth sectors in the Portuguese economy that are already quite diversified in terms of their investment portfolio. And so for that reason, while I do see the benefit of investing in 2 or maybe 3 different funds, I don't think investing in many, many different funds is necessarily a necessary component of a diversification strategy.
Okay, thanks.
I'd also back that up in terms of what we've seen. I mean, you know, Steve, since November and the American elections, I mean, we had 700 inquiries about golden visa from America alone on the day after the election, and we've had various spikes along the way in the last 5 or 6 months. But when you actually look at what's going on, you know, a lot of people that have got international investments, a lot of them have got them in public stocks in the big 15 American companies, or they've got them in property. So, you know, having some diversification in another country that's in one or more funds that across those, you know, key sectors is probably more than enough. And sometimes we'll get people that go look to the 3 funds, but most end up settling on 1 or 2 in our experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm quite conscious of the time, and I want to get to some of these sort of questions. One of the questions that's come up a number of times in the chat, and I know we've obviously addressed this, but Henrique, I think if you can just maybe address it again or just reiterate, is people obviously wanting to understand how long their 500,000 needs to be invested for.
Exactly.
So if you can just sort of just sort of go over that again quickly before we get.
So the idea is, first of all, the investment needs to be completed in order for the investor to be in conditions of filing the golden visa. Before the investment is completed, we cannot file the golden visa. Once the golden visa is filed, the idea is that the golden visa is kept until the moment, so not only during the 5 years that are required to accumulate for the citizenship, but also during the period while the investor waits for the decision on the citizenship request. Okay, and nowadays it's taking around 2 years, sometimes a little bit more, like a few more months, 2 months-ish. 2 years-ish, but I would count with, in order not to be conservative but realistic, I would count with a period of 7 to 8 years. That's why the lifetime of the investment is usually around that period. Okay, a little bit more, and also the funds usually adapt themselves, as the funds also know that the purpose of the investment is to have access to the citizenship. Usually, even if it's 7 to 8 years, the funds try to adapt a little bit their rules to the fact that the investor needs that investment to have access to the citizenship. So I would count with 5 years from the moment it's filed online, plus 2 years and a half, because sometimes the investor may take a little bit more to have the A2 certificate, or a little bit more than the 5 years before filing it. I would count with 7 to 8 years. Let's say 7 to 8 years from the moment we file the golden visa online.
Thank you.
Steve, on that point, that doesn't mean to say if there has been dividends or upside that, you know, the fund managers can disperse upside. It's just the capital needs to remain, because the Portuguese government want that investment, and in return they're giving you and your family this opportunity. So it's not the fund managers holding on because they want to deliver the returns because they're linked to the performance of the fund. Or funds. So it's really often in the best interest of the investor to stay in a bit longer. But if there's a waterfall event where there's a major exit, the fund manager can disperse those upsides and dividends, and still leave the capital there so they don't invalidate the opportunity for the permanent EU passport.
Lovely. Okay, thank you for clarifying that one, Paul. Again, we'll get to a couple of these questions. I'm just sort of going through them. As I said, obviously, we are quite clearly not going to get to all of them before we end today. I'm conscious as well as the fact that it's a bank holiday or Portugal Day in Portugal today. So again, some of our panelists have got other obligations, should we say. So we got a question here from Sam. And Sam is saying, how long does the whole golden visa application investment process take? So Henry, can you sort of take this one? And again, I get Thomas to come in off the back of that to sort of talk about.
But of course, it will depend a little bit on how expedite the investors are in sending us all the documents and the documents that are required for the KYC of the bank, for the investment, because many documents will need to be obtained but if we have a diligent investor that really wants to file it as soon as possible, I would say 2 to 3 months we can have everything ready to be submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe
Steve,
2 to 4 months, I would say we have everything ready to be submitted. Yeah.
And Steve, it's worth saying alongside that, once you're a few weeks into the application process, setting up the bank account, the NIF, then that's the time to talk to Portugal Pathways about the different investment opportunities. And then we can sort of meet in the middle. And then once the investor is comfortable with a shortlist, you can start to talk to the fund managers like Thomas at Portugal Future Fund or other funds, and start to dig into the detail before making a final decision. But one thing I would say in terms of Portugal, there's a lot of demand for golden visa at the moment. So the more proactive you are and a little bit getting understanding of Portuguese culture, if you go slow, they'll go slower. So I don't know if I appreciate
that comment, but okay.
No. What I mean to say is, you if you embrace Portuguese culture, you understand that to enjoy the culture is to take a more relaxed view of life. Now that doesn't mean we are
Latins. We are Latins, Paul, and
exactly,
that's it. Yeah,
exactly.
It's true.
And so therefore, the process is the process, but you've got to be proactive, and you can get it done, in good order.
Yeah. No, the investor clearly needs to if the investor wants to have it quickly, of course, needs to be proactive and needs to be expedite in getting what we ask, of course.
Lovely. Great, thank you. And again, just looking through some of these questions, a lot of these questions that we have answered, but again, Thomas, just to sort of go over and reiterate, it's a question from Amelia, and she's thinking that she might have understood, but she's asking about splitting the investment and just obviously diversifying the risk. And again, she's asking if it can go into multiple funds. So again, if you quickly you could just go over that point again, that'd be great. Thank you.
Right. Yes, sure. So yes, it is possible to diversify your investment across different funds within the Golden Visa. As I mentioned before, not all Portuguese funds are necessarily Golden Visa eligible. They have to meet certain eligibility requirements, namely that at least 60% of the assets are invested in Portugal, that they don't make any real estate investments, and that the investment is maintained for a period of at least 5 years. So as long as they're complying with these 3 requirements, they can be eligible for the Golden Visa program. And within the set of eligible funds, you can diversify your investment. So in theory, you can invest 250,000 euros in one fund and 250,000 euros in the other. And this is still a Golden Visa eligible, let's say, solution when it comes to your investment. As I mentioned before, we typically don't recommend to diversify too much or into too many funds, because at some point, I think you're losing out from the benefits of diversification. and you're going into complex territories when it comes to managing your investments, and potentially even diversifying into funds that are not as reputable or not as advantageous from an investment point of view. But yes, it is possible. Maybe Henri can comment more on this when it comes to visa eligibility, but it is possible from our point of view as a fund manager.
No, it is possible, and let me tell you, it's clearly. I was going to add this a while ago, but I didn't find it useful or necessary back then. So, in the beginning, when this modality of funds started, it was not common to have the investor with this wheel of in diversifying and investing in one or more in two or more funds. I think that probably the profile of the investor also changed, and it's a really. I think that maybe the investors are also more sophisticated nowadays, and this is an investment rule that is really well known. Diversify, not putting all the eggs in the same basket, right? Usually, we advise, if they want to diversify, we advise them to diversify in 2, 3 maximum. Otherwise, it's a confusion. You reduce the return of the percentage of the return that you will have in each one of the funds, and it's too much information. Even to follow up within the following years, it's too much information. We usually advise to invest in 2 if they really want to diversify, which we understand. We, as Tomas was saying, what we say is for people to invest in 2, 3 maximum. More than that, it runs against the investor and the strategy, the investment strategy.
And not only that, some of these funds are heavily diversified anyway. So you're putting diversification on diversification, and a lot of the people that are investing, have got money tied up in public stocks in other international markets. So, you can go mad with it, and quite often there's funds here that really already have that built into their strategy.
It's true.
But diversification is good, but not diversification for diversification's fault.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So again, conscious that we're sort of going over a little bit. So again, apologies if we didn't get around to answering all your questions. The Portugal Pathways team will obviously reach out to you individually, answer any questions, set up any appointments, or provide insight that you've requested. But before we sort of go today, I'd love to hear just from each of the panelists one last time, sort of a wrap up, really, sort of one key takeaway for our audience to sort of go away and mull over. So, Tomas, I'm going to start with you. Just sort of one sort of top level, what would someone take away today?
Well, I think it really depends on your personal situation and what you're looking for in terms of your investments. But I would say one thing to consider is when it comes to investing in fund solutions, when it comes to investing in Portuguese funds especially, look at what kind of sectors of the Portuguese economy you're interested in and what kind of fund solution is a good fit for you. Because at the end of the day, we can talk about which fund is better, which fund is worse. And I know Portugal Pathways has an index of 30 different options, but some funds are better for you personally, and they might be worse for someone else, depending on what they're looking for. And there's lots of characteristics to consider, not just when it comes to sectors, and also not just when it comes to concentration risk or diversification, but also liquidity. Some funds are more liquid than others. Also, when it comes to duration, maturity, are you looking for something more medium term, short term, or are you looking for something more long term? I think all of these are things to consider before you make an investment decision. Linked to that, I would say that another key takeaway is that at the moment, not just for the Golden Visa program, which obviously is very attractive, but Portugal in itself as a country, I think, is a very hot destination at the moment, both as an investment destination and as a migration destination. We see a lot of high net worth individuals moving to Portugal. And from my point of view, I think this is a sign or an indication that Portugal is trending upwards. It will continue to trend upwards in the next few years. And I think it will become more and more a hot immigration and investment destination for lots of different people around the world. So while this opportunity is out there, I think it's good to invest in the Golden Visa program, even if you don't necessarily want to relocate to Portugal, or if you don't have immediate plans to relocate to Portugal. Having that second option is good. Having that second option, especially in the current global context of political instability in lots of different countries, having this backup, having this option to move to Portugal and to move to Europe, I think is a benefit that at the moment lots of high net worth individuals can afford. And if you can afford it, I think it's good for you. It's good for your family. It's good from an investment point of view. It's a good country to invest in, regardless of the Golden Visa advantage. So while this option is out there, and at the moment we don't have any indication that it will end, but while it is available, I think it's definitely something to consider.
Lovely, thank you. I think you've wrapped up for everybody there, Thomas. I mean,
exactly.
Henrique, have you got anything left to say?
I think that Mars just wrapped up amazingly. I don't have much more to say. I would just add, because I know most of the investors are making a decision between the different European Golden Visa programs we have, and I already studied the issue because I needed to, and I already wrote about it. And there are no doubts that for all of those, that not only because Portugal, it's indeed an amazing destination because of the people, because of the food, because of the weather, but especially because it's clearly the best one and the easiest one to have access to the European passport. When you compare it with Spain, when you compare it with Greece, when you compare it with the other ones. And just one final note, because this is something that many clients come to me to speak about. There was a recent decision that many people read about in Malta, of the European Court of Justice regarding the Golden Visa in Malta, because the Golden Visa in Malta came to an end. Just to say to everyone that the Maltese Golden Visa program had nothing to do with the Portuguese Golden Visa. On the contrary, it was even called as the European the Golden Passport and not the Golden Visa. And the main difference, and that's why the Portuguese Golden Visa is not in danger because of the decision of the European Court of Justice. In Malta, the investor would just need to invest. You would go to a biometrics appointment, and in the end of the year, without coming back to Malta, they would have access to the European passport. In Portugal, the regime is completely different, as you already understood. So you need to have access to the card. 5 years. You need to demonstrate that you have 5 years of legal residency, and you need to prove a connection with the Portuguese territory and the Portuguese culture, namely by demonstrating that you speak a basic level of Portuguese. So for all of those who had contact or read something about this decision of the European Court of Justice on the Malta program, on the Maltese program, just for everyone can be rest. So this has nothing to do with the Portuguese Golden Visa. The Portuguese Golden Visa, at least for now, let's see until when, but at least for now, it's live and kicking, and it's clearly the best solution for all of those who want to have access to an European passport.
Thank you, Henry.
And I've just got one last thing to add, Steve. Obviously, the government has said yesterday that it continues to support, but there will be pressure from Europe to maybe increase the investment level. So, it is an affordable thing for a lot of people internationally to get that second passport and to include a lot of their family members on that. So, now is a great time to be investing in Portugal. And if it gives you the flexibility and desired state, and you can still decide where you want to be tax status and evolve your journey into Portugal and further into Europe, then the Portugal investment route through the Golden Visa is certainly the best out there right now.
Let me just add something, because it's important, Paul, regarding the family members. I think I was clear a while ago, but for all of those who want to include their children, even if they already have more than 25, or even if they are no longer studying, if they are single, and even if they are working already, if you demonstrate that they are enrolled somewhere, this complies with the requirement. Okay, so you can easily include children, even if they're already independent, even if they are working, only by demonstrating that they are enrolled and that they are single. This was an important key.
Lovely. Well, I think we've summed up between us, or between everybody there, perfectly in terms of this opportunity that the Golden Visa Residency by Investment presents. I want to thank, obviously, the audience, obviously, for staying with us. And again, if we didn't get around to all of your questions, we will reach out to you. A big thank you to Thomas, to Henrique, and to Paul for their time and insight. And just to say that our next webinar is on July the 8th, and it is around tax and estate planning in Portugal. So again, a link has been shared. If you want to register for that one, please do. And we'll be sending out a recording of this one if you want to sort of go over some of the points again. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.